Welcome to the SIP, the Solstice Innovations podcast. In each episode, we chat with industry experts and innovators in insurance and Insurtech. Join us for insights on trends, technologies, and the stories driving our industry forward. Let's sip on knowledge together at the SIP.
All right, and welcome to the SIP. In today's podcast, we have as our guest Dr. Andrew Johnston of Gallagher Re. So let's just get right into things, Andrew, and start off with maybe having you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background and explain your role at Gallagher Re.
Sure. Thank you, John. And thanks again for having me on this. I'm very grateful to you. I run the Insurtech practice for Gallagher Re, which is the reinsurance broking arm of Arthur J. Gallagher, the broker and risk consultant. And in my role, I manage a team of people who are all tasked with looking to work with the best-in-class businesses in the insurance and reinsurance industry that identify with the label of Insurtech. And that label, John, has kind of come to mean two distinctive business models that we work with both. The first are companies that are creating software and technological products and systems for the incumbent insurance industry. So that's solutions to support insurers, reinsurers, and intermediaries. And then the second, which is probably where I spent more of my time, are those businesses that similarly identify as Insurtech that are digitally enabled risk originators that require the services of a reinsurance broker for risk capacity and fundraising purposes. And finding paper and distribution, that kind of thing. So that's sort of my overall day job. I do also run some internal technological development projects myself for the benefit of Gallagher Re, and I produce thought leadership every quarter, which I guess is the basis for our conversation, where I produce a report and have been producing that report for about 8 years now, which is an overview of the global Insurtech investment numbers. Typically has a theme, and I'll sort of include companies that I think are really interesting in that space. And then just a bit of prior Gallagher Re life. I was part of the Willis Re transaction where we were acquired a few years ago. And then before Willis Re, I was in academia for a long time. I was a lecturer in London, and after that worked in a couple of specialty agriculture businesses. And then I did a short stint with the UN, and then fell into reinsurance.
Quite a varied background that you have. So I imagine, I know you, and so you strike me as the type of fellow that really just enjoys learning about something that you don't know about and digging into it and seeing what it's all about. So I think that kind of makes you a perfect candidate to do some of the work that you do, particularly with that quarterly report.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
So let's talk about that quarterly report. First of all, thank you for including Solstice Innovations in your Q3 2024 report. But let's talk about that report a little bit more broadly. So how did it all start? How did you get started producing this report? How has it evolved? And who should pay attention to it?
So the report was really the brainchild of a function in Willis back in 2017 that wanted to speak to the securities audience, because Insurtech at that time was sort of generating interest in the investment community. And I was asked to be involved in the report to kind of help generate a brand, I guess, for us in that space. And so we partnered with a data company who are still our partners called CB Insights, who provide us with the raw investment data. And the reaction, even to the first report, which candidly is not or was not as sort of professional looking as it is now, was extremely well received. And the market immediately kind of said, look, we've been waiting for something like this. It's put together very nicely, and there was clearly appetite to kind of keep pushing these out, and we chose this sort of quarterly cadence. And we really wanted to provide to the readers our view, not only on what the investment activity more broadly can tell us about what's going on in the Insurtech space, but also understand the kind of non-financial implications of technology more broadly in our industry. And so the report each quarter sort of focuses on an area that we think is either particularly in vogue or is just more broadly interesting and should be tackled. And as the report got more and more readers, we were able to get sort of more resource for it. And like I say, now it looks a lot more professional than that first ever edition. And I'm the kind of sole owner of it now. I mean, it's firmly within the reinsurance business. And each year I pick a theme, and I pick a theme that can be sort of comfortably broken up into 4 parts that tells a bigger story. And then each quarter we sort of dive into that theme, and then there is still that backdrop of the investment figures as well. And so this year I chose to focus on the role of AI in the insurance and the reinsurance value chain, with Q1 being focused on sales and distribution. Q2 was risk, which is pricing, underwriting, and portfolio management. Q3, where Solstice was profiled, was sort of central business systems and core operating systems. And then Q4, which will go out early next year, is focused on claims, everywhere from sort of FNOL to settlement, but also will include some areas on fraud as well, and how AI in particular is kind of changing that landscape. And that has been the thesis ever since. And then the readership, I mean, I'm sort of blown away by the numbers that I'm quoted and told from our analytics and marketing teams, but it's global, and it's not just insurance and reinsurance people reading it. As you can imagine, a lot of tech companies read it, a lot of investors read it, a lot of the sort of third-party consultants read it, financial analysts consume it. This year we were featured in the Wall Street Journal. We've been featured in Reuters. It really has taken on a sort of life of its own, and it has its own brand. So if you're in the tech space, if you're in the insurance space, if you're in the investment space, I hope that there's something in there that would be interesting to you.
Yeah, I would think so. And yeah, that's a great point you make about going beyond the originally intended readership, because so many industries, while each industry has its nuances and specifics, we're all trying to tackle the same problems. We're all trying to come up with solutions to those problems, and we all experience a lot of the same problems as businesses. So, yeah, completely am not surprised by the fact that the readership goes well beyond the originally intended audience. Kind of curious though, Andrew, how do you land on your themes? Is it, current news cycles or something else? How do you come up with?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it does sort of take a bit of thought. I mean, obviously, the kind of current news cycles are really important, and we want to talk about something that's sort of contemporaneously grabbing people's attention, which is why AI was picked for this year, because it's just like, I mean, I'm going to use the word buzzword, but it goes beyond that. But it is the term that everybody is wanting to sort of refer to and talk about this year. And so we wanted to always be seen to be being relevant and provide sort of insights to our clients as to how they might be thinking about this. Additionally, I have the benefit of speaking to pretty much every P&C carrier on earth, a lot of life and health carriers as well, and I have executive sort of board meetings with them where we're running advisory projects and we're talking about technology, and I get the benefit of hearing at scale what people are thinking about, what people are talking about. I get asked a lot of the same sorts of questions, and so that really helps me hone our focus, John, because I kind of know what's going to land. And I think the benefit of that means that we can distill down lots of information for a very broad group who we may or may not be spending a lot of time with in person. Similarly, because we are always operating in the context of a business in our industry, we're not necessarily preoccupied with the underlying technology itself. And so I try and keep our insights very much at a business level, where we make insights that are commercially relevant and saleable, where we are always thinking about profitability, we're always thinking about margin, we're always thinking about appropriateness of the leveraging of technology in the context of a business. Whereas I think a lot of other pieces and lots of other commentary in this space tends to focus almost exclusively on the technology itself. And there's some value in that, but technology in isolation doesn't really do anything for us. And so I like to position our insights and our thought leadership firmly in the context of a business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I think that's a big challenge. It always has been a challenge for technicians and technology companies, is how to speak to it in terms that the business gets, or in business terms, I guess I should say, because technology, it's cool and all that can be sexy, but what's it really mean to the business? That's the important part that's so often missing in messaging from technology companies
Agreed.
to the business.
Agreed.
So, hey, speaking of knowing where things are going to land, I realize this is kind of looking ahead, but in the Q3 report, you talk about how the more recent funding cycles have been focused in Insurtech, have been focused on those AI centric types of companies or technologies. How do you see that trend moving forward?
I see it continuing to grow and quite possibly might become so universally ubiquitous that it's almost not worth calling out anymore. And I think part of that is because companies are aware that if you refer to something as being AI enabled, it has more value, it has more carry in the investment market. And so I think companies that were previously AI powered, but not necessarily screaming and shouting about it, are now making more of a big deal about it. But similarly, I think more modern technological tools are inherently AI powered because that is the direction of traffic. And so it's not surprising to me at all that the vast majority of capital going into the Insurtech space is into companies that identify as having an AI capability. And I do see the label eventually being retired because it's going to be so inherent. It would almost be akin to saying, "Oh, we're a .com business." It's like you don't need to say that anymore. And I think that we're going in that sort of direction of travel, particularly with AI as it relates to the use of technology into businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just is. So let's go back to that business value then. So we use the term AI a lot today to mean a lot of things that aren't necessarily AI. And like you said, eventually, probably just won't be talking about it anymore because it is buried in what we do. So, and I'm going to blend in a little bit more of your report here as well, that talks about how we don't really do a good job yet of really. I'm not using the terms that you use in the report, but we don't really do a good job of recognizing or taking advantage of the value that we get, just in AI, but in other technological advances, in our operating expenses and things like that. How big of an issue do you see that, and how do you see us overcoming them?
That's a great question. And just to clarify, I mean, AI is obviously this kind of umbrella catch-all label for dozens of different technologies. And the one thing that they have in common is that they either produce or run on or require human-like cognitive processing. Okay, and so once you kind of establish that it actually refers to a multitude of different technologies, that's when you can kind of really get interesting as a business in terms of selecting the sorts of technologies that you want to work with. I guess my insight or observation, I should say, as it relates to as an industry, us using it appropriately is sort of multifaceted, in as much as I think that because we're still at a relatively early nascent phase, a lot of companies in our space are still sort of getting to grips with actually what a technology strategy looks like, whether it's AI enabled or not. And then if you get to that next phase of it being AI driven, is this something that truly needs to be done. Is AI the most appropriate technology, and what is your prescribed ROI or sort of positive outcome that you want to associate with such an initiative? And I think that final area is one that we don't really talk about enough as an industry, and I did sort of highlight it in the report, which is, if you use a tool that saves you, for example, 2 hours of your working day, but you then don't use that saved 2 hours to go on and be more productive, have you actually generated an ROI? You could argue that you haven't, because you're not then using that freed up time to do something creative or to be productive or profitable, etc. And I think as an industry, we aren't doing a good enough job about the honesty that is required in those conversations to articulate what the value add is. And in some cases, it might be the redefinition of role type. In some cases, it might be streamlining certain businesses. In other cases, it might be a true sort of expansion into a new area. Or the ideal state is that things stay more or less the same, but people are, as I say, more productive. And you then, I don't want to get sort of too philosophical with you, John, but you then get to the point of human restriction, which is, if you gave me the ability to run at 100 miles an hour 5 days a week for 8 hours, is that realistic for a human? No, it's not. And actually, maybe having an hour a day to go through emails or doing a sort of slightly less productive task, but I'm sort of restoring, regenerating, healing, learning, is actually part of the human condition that's required. So I think what's missing is that honesty in the conversation. And we're getting there, right? And people are doing a better job of articulating not just the advertised value, but what that then means in a real life setting when it's delivered, how you then respond to the delivery, right? And I think that's where we are as an industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not a new issue either. I mean, this challenge has been around probably as long as IT has been around. Years ago, I worked for an insurance company that, any IT initiative had to be posed with a business case that
Yeah,
included an ROI. And the ROI was flagged as either these are green dollars or these are brown dollars. And the brown dollars were those efficiencies, and if you didn't come in to the review panel with green dollars, your brown dollar initiative was less likely to be approved,
yeah.
because so often you say, oh, it's going to give us all these efficiencies, and maybe it does. But to your point, if you don't do anything with those efficiencies that have some impact
Exactly.
on the line.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I even use things like PowerPoint as an example, right? So when PowerPoint first came into the space, let's say it was 94 sort of era, probably earlier than that, there was this fundamental shift of, oh, we can use this technology to do much better presentations that can be done remotely or sent to somebody as a file, etc. That technology still exists, and I don't know that we're still seeing the same value creation with every iteration of PowerPoint. All we're seeing are better looking PowerPoints. And so people are better at using PowerPoint and the output looks prettier, but has it actually added anything like that initial value that it did? And I think, again, we've just got to be honest with ourselves about it. So I think the industry is in a good space. I think people are very open-minded. I think that the value of technology is undoubtedly being realized. I just think that we are doing it in a way where we're learning a lot of harsh lessons along the way that don't necessarily need to be learned. And some of that is just the environment. Some of it is a lack of discipline. But I think more often than not, it's a result of two fairly disparate worlds coming together, in that you're asking an insurance executive or whatever to assess the value of a technology, and they're not necessarily the best equipped person to make that judgment, and yet they have to. And so I think a lot of it is just sort of learning by doing, but we're getting better at it as an industry, undoubtedly.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So, hey, Andrew, I have one more question for you. So, setting technology aside, what do you think is the next big thing or next big things, plural, in the insurance industry?
Well, that's a huge question. I mean, I guess my mind immediately goes to those existential threats that we need to respond to as an industry, and climate is probably the biggest one. And then within climate, you've got things like carbon, and most recently, there was the COP event where new pledges were made to to meet certain global climate goals. And as an industry, we need to produce products and solutions that reflect those back to society. And I do think they pose a threat because they move very quickly. As a threat vector, not to get too insurancy on you, but as a vector, it's moving, and we need to respond with something that can similarly be agile. And so I think as an industry, we need to be very alerted to this fact. But again, not to kind of come back to technology, because I know we were specifically talking about it, but I do think that will be a huge part of the answer. And so I think it is having an industry that is relevant. I think it's an industry that has products at a price that people want, and I think it's providing services to people in a way that they want it. And everything seems to be getting done quicker and quicker and quicker. Expectations are higher and higher and higher. The world seems to be changing more quickly, etc. And so it is just staying a pace with it all.
All right. Well, thanks, Andrew. Anything you would like to close out with?
I guess just a kind of cold sell really for the report. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it is free. It can be downloaded on the Gallagher website. So if you just type in Gallagher Re Insurtech Report 2024 Q3, it'll take you straight to the page where you can download it. It's quite a long report, so no need to read all of it, but I'd certainly look at the solstice section. Yeah, I mean, I hope it's something that people enjoy reading.
Yeah, I think they will if they go out and take a look. And I know I can't wait to see your next one.
Thank you.
On claims and how AI can impact the claims process. Absolutely something that's talked about at every conference I've been to in the last 18 months.
Yeah,
I know it's heavily on insurance companies' minds. So,
thank you, John. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Andrew Johnston of Gallagher Re, for being on the SIP. Appreciate it very much, and hope you have a wonderful day.